Good evening. This frequency is frequently in use, but is this frequency currently in use? Going twice? Okay, good evening. This is Jim, K2BHM, with the OMARC Sunday Night Science Net. Is there anyone with any emergency traffic or priority traffic to communicate before we start the net? Okay, nothing heard. Let's get this show in gear. This is, as I said, Jim, K2BHM, with the OMARC Sunday Night Net. It is obviously on 146.805, or you wouldn't be hearing me. The transmit shift is a minus 600 kc with a PL tone of 103.5. And if necessary, we'll break for emergency traffic. So don't hesitate. Anyhow, interesting scenario. Some guys have mentioned correlation between Johnny Carson and the McMahon, and compared Neil, W2NTG, and myself to that combo. And I got thinking, that's an interesting association. We can have some fun with that. So, okay. Let's go with that. Neil is relinquishing the hot seat to me tonight, so Ed's running the show and Johnny's running shotgun. And I promise you, no publisher clearinghouse ads, they're not sponsoring the show. So, And things will be a little different tonight. Johnny normally has guests on, and he interviews the guests, and they become the center of attention. And people are interested and anxious to hear what they have to say and learn more about them. And we're going to get that to go tonight. So here's kind of how I'm thinking things are going to work. You drop a second. So here's the scenario. Everybody here tonight is a licensed radio amateur, which means that they studied up and sat down in front of an examiner and took an official FCC test and passed it and was awarded an FCC license and call sign. And so from there, that allows you to transmit legally on these frequencies. And somewhere along the line, you picked up a radio, or 2 or 3 or 10, and antennas to match. So obviously, it's quite a hobby. It's very obsessive and compulsive, but not in that combination. I think that has a different connotation, but basically it is a passion. And a lot of us know there's only one cure for this situation, that's buy another radio, which brings up the question of what radio I buy and what antenna works best with that. And that topic has been brought up time and time again. Dave, our president, K2JLB, runs the Thursday night net at 8 o'clock, which is geared towards radio amateur. And that question comes up quite often. And it's a valid question that comes up and very pertinent when we have new hams get their license or new things at the market. But the Science and Technology Net, Neil and I wanted to veer away from that. We didn't want to step on Dave's toes. Dave does a very good job at that. We wanted to get into different things. Let me drop. So the idea is we want to seek out new and interesting life forms and civilizations and boldly go where no man has gone before. Okay, sorry. Gene Roddenberry copyrighted that. Can't do that. But anyhow, here's the idea. We all get together 8:35 in the morning and 6:30 at night and talk about things very briefly. And there are a lot of other things going on in life besides radio amateur. Well, obviously you got to sleep and eat, and you have to go to work to make the money to buy radios. But people might have other interests out there that would be interesting to other people. And you don't really have enough time to get into it deeply during the normal check-in net. So tonight what I'd like to do is see what's going on out there. Shake the trees and see what falls out. Somebody might have an interesting camera that has a lot more capability and possibilities and more fun to play with than the standard smartphone camera. Some people might like to get into the kitchen and combine different ingredients in different ways with different tools and techniques and make different culinary delights. All kinds of things out there. Somebody might be interested in outdoor activities. And somebody might even like to make little steam engines in their garage. So here's the plan. I'm going to open the door, let everybody check in with their name and call sign, and please be gentle. Give some space because Ed is making his own cue cards tonight. He doesn't have a production director that can assign a crew member to do that for him. He's doing it himself. So be kind to me. And once we take inventory, see who's here, generate the roster list, we'll go around guided one at a time like the 630 net, or 630 net does, and give everybody a chance to say a little something about what they like to do other than amateur radio. And we'll establish a plethora of different things to talk about. Something might only be worth a few sentences, and a lot of things we've covered in the past. And I'd like to just kind of open it up and let's see what you guys like to do and go from there. Let me first see if Neil, if you're there, do you have anything to add to it? Any comments or whatever? W2NDG, K2BHF.
Well, I am here tonight, Jim. This is W2NDG, Neil, in Highland. Dropping for a second. When you first told me about tonight's subject, what I was thinking, is that we would have somebody come on who would say, well, yeah, I have other interests other than, mainstream ham radio. I'm into digital mode ham radio, and I'm into low power ham radio, and into outdoor ham radio. And then that got me thinking of the Blues Brothers with, what kind of music do you listen to here? And the woman says, oh, we got both kinds, country and Western. But obviously we're looking for a much broader response. And I'll throw mine in when it comes around. But yes, Jim, I'm here. And thank you for running the net tonight. I really appreciate it. Back to you.
Thanks, Neil, K2BHM. And as you can see, we're looking for all kinds of things. Dave does a very good job on the radio amateur techniques, digital, whatever. I kind of like to keep this a little more general and open for anything that's technology related. Whatever you think about that you'd like to learn more about, or think that you can help other people with, that's where we're headed. So with that, let me open up the floodgates and see who's out there. Give me your name and your call sign. And like I say, please be slow because it's taking his own cue cards. K2BHM, open it up to the floor.
Good evening, this is Steve, K2GOG. This is KD2TLF Guy.
This is
KD2RFI Bob Capcom. This is KD2PAH Jim in Poughkeepsie.
This is November 2 Foxtrot Zulu Charlie Tom in Fishkill. Here is KD2 GGF Matt in Carhunction.
okay. I think I copied everybody. So far, we've got my sidekick. Strange. I'm normally the sidekick, but W2NDG Neil. I got K2GOG Steve, KD2TLF Guy, KD2RFI Bob, KD2PAH Jim, N2FCT Tom, and KB2GGF Matt. Did I miss anybody? And is there anybody else that would like to enter that K2BHM net control?
This is KD2MNR Mike in Poughkeepsie, but I'm going to secure now because I'm going to have to go to bed pretty soon. I'm going to listen for a while. But I'll be in statistics.
Okay, gotcha, Mike. Neil, question. Would you like to start off the conversation, or would you like to run clean up, or where would you like to be in the roster?
That's fine. I don't think it matters too much. I can start off. I don't mind. Also, I thought I'd mention real quick that we are streaming. I'm sure the video is not too interesting because it's me listening to you, but I assume everybody can hear the radio just fine. Who's just watching the video and possibly not listening to you on the radio as well. But I don't mind starting.
Yeah, I was wondering how you're going to do the streaming because I'm not set up for it. But that's cool. That works. So go ahead. What do you like to do? Get you be a gym.
Well, I'm not an expert videographer. Actually, I was thinking of using Jitsi again tonight, but it throws in a much longer delay. Even though, I mean, there's already a delay, so it's not a huge difference. But that's one of Steve's favorite conferencing apps. But this is fine. As time goes on, we'll get a little more sophisticated, and the videos are going to go to the OMARC YouTube channel anyway. There's a few things I enjoy. Things I used to be more into than I am now. But a lot of you know that one of my favorite things is getting out into the wilderness and looking at the plant life. Specifically, I've always been into edible wild plants and foraging. It's a topic I've learned a lot about. I really enjoy it, and I've been fascinated with the fact that everything we eat, as far as a plant, came from somewhere. Everything grew wild at some point and has been cultivated to be something that we eat. And those origins are still out there. All the original plants that we developed everything from, they're still out there. And then there's all sorts of other things that people either don't know are edible or have gone by the wayside. So, but in addition to the edible stuff, I do have a fascination for, trees and wildflowers and the grasses and the weeds. It's something I'm definitely into. More peripherally, I'm still into cars, mostly just following the industry, and also music and audio. We have some obviously very accomplished musicians in the group, and I've been out of it for so long. I do have a digital piano I'm rebuilding on my workbench downstairs, and when that's done, I'll probably start playing a little more again. But I do play, I compose a little, and get into that stuff. But mainly, other than ham radio, it's computers, natural things, and just the outdoors in general. W2NDG, back to you.
Thanks, Neil. I think I've seen you with Field Day, comparing notes with Ken TQS on that, and going around and investigating things.
Yeah, I didn't have time to do some of the setups that they had in mind last year. Steve had suggested it, and Ken was kind enough to go around and put up some tags and signs on some common things and some uncommon things. Ferncliff is a great spot for finding wild edibles. There's some things there that I hadn't actually seen yet, and there's a huge abundance of some common things and good things, and it's always fun. And it's one of those things, I go to a spot and my family jokes around with me because they see me staring at the ground, and they're looking at a bird flying overhead, and I'm staring into the weeds. But I definitely enjoy it, and my new yard here in Highland is a lot more interesting than the last couple of places I lived. So also I have the chat up in YouTube here, and KB2RWW officially checked in on YouTube. That's KB2RWW. So I can actually call on him for something when we get to the end of the list.
Okay, yeah, I do remember Ken setting up some signs lines there to indicate what certain things were and so forth. Very interesting. He added another dimension to the event to draw interest in from other people that happen to be coming by. So with that, let me pass it over to Steve, K2GOG. What do you do when you're not radio amateur?
Well, good evening, everybody. Steve, K2GOG here in Poughkeepsie. What am I doing when I'm not doing radio amateur stuff? So that is a good question. I have lots of interests. Many of them overlap with Neil. Outdoors, funny enough, I am outside right now, enjoying a really pleasant evening, watching the ducks in the pond do things that they do around this time of year, or so I'm told. I'll keep it family friendly. So, yeah, I like outdoor stuff. The funny part is I'm literally testing out a new chair for constant refitting of things that go into my hiking pack, because it is actually nice when you're camping, solo especially, to have a place to sit. So I figured this would be a good opportunity to test this out and see if I could sit still for about an hour or so in this chair. So hiking, camping, outdoors, wilderness type of stuff, very big into that. Most may hear me chat about Summits on the Air, and you'll be hearing way more about Islands on the Air. But again, those are amateur radio topics, so I'm steering clear of those, Jim. But it's more of the activity first, and the radio just happens to add some enjoyment. So let me let it drop for now. I don't think I shared too much, but outside of the outdoors and related stuff, lots of electronic, check all the boxes off topics, and a slew of other things, but I'll keep it basic to not tie things up. So let me send it back over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Steve. K2BHM, your net control. Yeah, it sounds like a good way to combine two hobbies together and get the best of both. Being outdoors like that can put you in some good locations for doing some radio amateur contacts. So, good combo. Guy, KD2TLF. What's your favorite thing to do?
Thanks, Jim. And Steve, good to see you yesterday again. Yeah, I have some other interests. I'm tempted to say music, but it's my profession, so I won't talk about that. But one of the things Judy and I both enjoy is the wildlife. We live kind of in the country here, and we have all sorts of animals, and we kind of make friends with them. Chipmunks, I know a lot of people think of them as pets, but we've tamed a bunch of them. They come back every year, and we feed them peanuts, and they, well, haven't gotten it, you have to kind of tune them in every year, so it hasn't gotten started yet, but to the point of where you sit outside in a chair, and they'll climb in your lap, and you give them peanuts, and peanuts is the currency of chipmunks, by the way. So let me drop. We have a couple of geese that come back every year, and they just honk and land, and we give them some corn, and they come over and kind of gather around like domestic chickens, and it's kind of nice to see them. And then sometimes they bring their poults, or I don't know what you call. Let's see, turkey babies are geese babies, but they will sometimes bring them over. So that's kind of nice. Let's see. Yesterday was Judy's first time at my wife Judy at Ferncliff, and she saw a whole bunch of plants, including trout lilies that she had never seen blooming. So I mentioned to her that she would enjoy walking through there with Neil, because I know when I did, and he pointed out all sorts of edible plants and different things, and was very knowledgeable about that. So, radio has been really good for me the last year. So, thanks for running this net, Jim, and Neil, and I'll send it back to you, KD2 TLS.
Thanks, Guy. Jim, Net Control. Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. We live right here on Glenary Lake, and there's lots of ducks and geese, and there was even 3 swans here, 3 snow white swans, and it's just wonderful seeing them do their thing. We had some cats for a while, and they kind of deterred any wildlife hanging around, but they have since passed away, and wildlife is starting to build up again. It's pleasant observing it. Anyhow, KD2 RFI, Bob. What are you up to?
Good evening, everyone. KD2 RFI. Not a whole lot. Mostly just relaxing. Up this way, I don't know. I've always been homebound, so this whole COVID thing and being stuck at home is just normal routine for me. Up here, I got my honeybees. I got my chickens. Love working outside. I absolutely dread going inside and do housework, which is unfortunately kind of what I did for half of today. But I mean, I like going out doing my firewood and anything outside. Really, being outdoors, I love. I wish I was better at identifying plants and trees and whatnot, but not really that good at it. So collecting wild mushrooms is definitely out of the question. So people like me, though, there's an app for that. So which is pretty cool. I do love hiking, though. I love being up in the mountains. I haven't done that way too long. I got my dogs here. I train for search and rescue as well. So I keep busy. I almost got too many hobbies. I probably should cut down a little. Currently, last few years, I've been doing a whole lot of skydiving. So as many of you know, that's a little bit obsessed with it. I just can't seem to afford to do it as much as I'd like to do. But I definitely keep busy here. You know, anything outdoors. So, things have been kind of slow as far as the hiking and whatnot. But I think I've got so many hobbies and so many interests. I can't find time for the ones that I like to do, like to relax. Naturally, the animals kind of depend on me to make sure they're taken care of, secure, and all. So I spend a lot of time here, which I'm not complaining about, but I'd like to spend more time up in the mountains too. So I don't know. Other than that, that's about it. You know, pretty simple things, I suppose. So KD2 RFI, send it back to net.
Thanks, Bob. Jim, KDBHM, Net Control. Yeah, I enjoyed quite a few conversations with you and CJ on the Farmers and Gardeners Net, talking about the bees and livestock and so forth. Very interesting. And I do remember you talking about skydiving. Friends of ours that we used to go on a ski trip with live in Gardner, and I think they're just down the road past the airport where they go skydiving, and that's probably where you go out of for your excursions. Am I correct?
Yeah, affirmative. That's where I normally go. It's a short hop from here, really, like 45 minutes. It's nice and easy to get to. Great spot, great views along those mountains. I love it.
Yeah, I don't think I would be comfortable leaving a perfectly functional airplane mid-flight. I could understand the people that do it. It's just not for me. I'd rather have a good solid radio tower underneath me that I'd be putting the antennas on, but then again, that was 20 years ago. Anyhow. Moving on along. KD2BAH. Jim, what do you do for fun?
played with them in so long now, and they move along so fast. That and electronics. Doesn't necessarily have to be ham radio, just electronics. It's just something I like to do. I guess that's really about it. Got a pretty boring life, I guess. Back to Matt.
Thanks, Jim. Mallard. Hey, I have the same interest too. I got my motorcycle license when I was 16 back in, it was 1972 or something like that. Anyhow, do the math. I've been more into computer hardware and so forth, building computers, microprocessors and stuff like that. That's the fun part, and that's why I like Linux, is because you can get in there and do things. They don't engineer it around locking you out to maximize the money they can get from you. But anyhow, it's to each his own. Anyhow, we should move on along and see what Tom likes to do. And to FCT, K2BHM, the control.
K2BHM, that's it. To FCC. Well, people talking about outside. I like the outside. Some know I've got 5 birds, so usually that morning, that time, they're out flying around. They usually land on my shoulder and hang out with me for half hour, 45 minutes. A lot of squirrels in the yard, so I like watching the squirrels. We've got a couple of cardinals, so that's cool. I was going to start off by saying, what do you mean? There's something else besides ham radio? But the other thing electronically is virtual reality. I got Oculus Quest, got the 1 and the 2. My son had the Rift, got the Oculus Rift a couple of years ago, which was cool. You know, it was tethered, and then Oculus came out with the standalone, self-contained, which I thought was pretty cool that they could do all that neat stuff without being connected to a computer. And then the Oculus 2 has a better chip, so they're getting into some really cool virtual reality stuff. Mostly games, which, you know, I play some games, but, you know, not be my focus. But some other cool virtual reality stuff. There was, you know, you go hang out with the elephants, and it's really like you're there. Or there's one space, a pretty cool program where you go and sort of look at each planet, and they tell you about it. Made up of a lot of NASA photos. You know, so you know, I like that cool virtual reality stuff. There's a lot of potential in virtual reality besides games. That's about it. And doing the ham radio stuff. Had my son's antenna analyzer and analyzing antennas. Found out that my alpha delta isn't really great. You know, maybe it's not set up quite right, so I got to work on that. That's about it for me. So Central FCC back to that.
Thanks, Tom. K2BHM Net Control. Got involved a little bit with virtual reality. Got into radio control models with my friend Ken, WB2TGG up in Cahoes. We would go out flying airplanes and so forth, and recently they're putting cameras now with 5 gigahertz links on the planes and on the drones, and then you have a receiver with the goggles and so forth, and you fly the device by looking at what you see in the goggles, and it's not easy, quite challenging. And if you're not used to it, you can lose your lunch. But that takes some expertise and some training and a lot of practice. So anyhow, let me pass it on on to Matt, KB2 GGF. What do you like to do?
That I have a number of interests. I play ukulele and I've been doing that for about 20 years. And interested in old movies. And have a number of dormant hobbies that listening to a few other people here sort of made me think I'd like to look at again. Let me drop it. Hearing the people keep these, I put to mind of making mead. Don't know if anybody makes mead, but I used to brew beer, and I brewed a couple of batches of mead, and it was pretty good. And I think that's something worthwhile if you like mead. So, that's about it. Probably a lot of other stuff, but there's only so much time in the day. So how often do you get to do them? That's the problem. Back to the control.
Thanks, Matt. K2BHM, Net Control. You brought back memories. My dad used to love to play the ukulele. Remember that as a kid. And mead, honey-based fermenting. Yes, never did that, but I did brew beer and did some wine. Mainly the white wines because the red wines were so much more difficult. But beer was a lot easier to make, and I love the real heavy dark ones, the porters and the stouts and so forth. They were excellent. And would like to get back into it again, but with the weight of moving 5 gallons around at a time and stuff like that with my back, that's not going to happen. But still, let's talk about it. So, at this point, let's see if Mike is there or if you pull the plug. KD2, MNR, K2BHM, Net Control. You there, Mike?
W2NDG.
Okay, nothing heard from Mike. Take it away, Neil.
Mike signed off, said good night. I got a message from him on that. And I also have KB2RWW in the chat on YouTube. And he wanted to add that if he's not playing with radios, he's playing with horses or just about anything electronic, including building robots, camping, motorcycles, hot rods, ATVs. He says the normal things in life, his hobbies are wide and vast.
Sounds like me. I've gotten into so many things over the years that it's hard to keep track of them. Anyhow, let me open it up and see if anybody else out there wants to join the party. K2BHM, Net Control, with the Sunday evening OMARC Science and Technology Net. Anybody else want to enter? Give me your name and call sign. Nothing heard. So at this point, what I'd like to do is you all have a good idea now of what our fellow members are doing. Anything interests you or anything that you like to add or whatever, speak up and give me your call sign and we'll give you the floor.
Can I throw one out, Jim? K2GOG here.
Sure can, Steve. Take the floor. K2GOG, K2BHM.
So certainly an interesting range of things. Many of us seem to share similar hobbies. One thing that came up, I guess, around brewing, I've not done it, but as many of us know in the Hudson Valley, breweries or brew pubs or anything, beer related and food related seem to be popping up But something recently new in Poughkeepsie is a meadery. So, that be turning honey into alcohol, I guess. That came up earlier. But another thing that didn't come up, and maybe this would be an easy thing for us, I kind of learned a little bit yesterday during the radio direction finding fox hunt. I was driving aimlessly around the Kingston area, and no part thanks to our club president, Dave, because that's where he hid one of the foxes. But running co-pilot for me yesterday was Charles, KD2PID. And I learned from him that when he was a young fella, his dad was into making homemade root beer. And so that got me thinking, because there is a place in Beacon that sells all sorts of extracts and everything. I thought that could be a fun thing. And it's like brewing, even though you're using yeast, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to have too high of an alcohol content, but that's how you get root beer. So I might add that to something worth looking into. So what do you think on that, Joe?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Mead, root beer, wine, beer, it's all fermented. And by controlling the ratios of fermentable sugars to non-fermentable sugars, you can control the alcohol content. And then later on, and when you bottle it, you throw a little extra sugar in that's fermentable to wake up the yeast and generate the carbon dioxide to carbonate it. And it's all part of the process. It can be quite easy or quite challenging, just like radioimetry. You get out of it what you want to put into it, and there's a lot of expertise and a lot of avenues to pursue, and a lot of fun.
So maybe we can get Neil to come up with an equation for making dandelion wine. What are your thoughts there? And I don't know if anyone wants to pick the topic up, but it's up to Chip since he's the master of the universe tonight.
Well, at this point, it's kind of open mic. Anything's fair. Anybody wants to talk about anything, whatever comes to your mind. You've heard what everybody else is into, whatever way you want to take it. Just give me a call sign, and we'll go with it.
W2NDG.
Neil, go with it.
Well, there's definitely crossover between home brewing and beverages and foraging and wild edibles. And actually, in this part of the country, more common, I think, than root beer was birch beer, because there are huge stands of black birch trees, which are the best for tapping. Black birch trees produce a sap like tapping a maple tree. It's not as concentrated as maple sap, which is funny because you always hear when they talk about making maple syrup, how far they have to boil it down. You've got to boil birch sap down even further to get something like, the consistency of maple syrup or maple sugar out of it. But birch has a very common and familiar flavor, which is wintergreen. And before they realized that they could synthesize the flavor of wintergreen, they used to get it from black birch trees. There is a plant called wintergreen, and it's in the foraging books. And look underneath the leaf matter on the forest floor, and you'll find it. It's a little tiny evergreen plant that lives on runners, produces a red berry, and the berry is edible and it tastes like wintergreen. You make tea out of the leaves and it's wintergreen, but you can never get enough out of this little tiny plant to do anything with. So it was always black birch. Let me drop. And it's one of my favorite things to do when I'm taking people into the woods who have never really been foraging and don't know much about wild edibles, is to pick black birch twigs and snap them and hand them to them and say, smell this. And it smells wonderful. It's that classic wintergreen smell. And where the crossover is here is that if you go into the one of the Ewell Gibbons books, I don't know if it's his first book or not, but his first book is Stalking the Wild Asparagus. And he talks about black birch and how to make your own birch beer. And it's a matter of steeping twigs and then letting it ferment. So, what we think of, root beer, birch beer, and other similar beverages. You'll see sarsaparilla sometimes on the shelf. And most of the original recipes of those beverages were alcoholic. So, and yes, I mean, there's dandelion wine, there's elderberry wine. There's certainly plenty of things you can do this with. So, interesting stuff and worth looking into. So, you can certainly do something with all the wild grapes.
Thanks, Neil. K2BHM net control. Yeah, lots of different things like that. You put them in water and heat them up to a certain level to extract certain fermentables out, and then another level to extract another fermentable type of sugar out, and take out what you need to make what you're going to do. Maybe you'll add some adjuncts in to flavor it, whatever, and then basically cool it back down and ferment it. In some cases, just for the purpose of getting carbonation. In other cases, it gets some alcohol in it. Whatever. There's thousands of recipes and thousands of books on doing it, so that could be a fun topic. Anybody else got anything to add to this topic? K2BHM net control, give me your call back.
Very chatty bunch tonight, Jim.
Yeah, things have been kind of quiet. Anybody else got anything else they want to bring up and talk about? Open mic. Make Johnny and Ed proud.
KD2VA8, Jim. Neil, can you guess what I'm going to ask about?
Groundhogs.
Real close. Yep. I want to know about grounding. I would like to hear anybody, even the least little tidbit that you know about grounding. I'm interested because it's my current project. Grounding for the radios to the outside, and then I guess you have to make a loop to the main ground rod underneath your electric and blah 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 blah. But anything you've heard, I would love to hear.
Well, don't fall into the gas.
Oh, that could be a blast. Neil, comments? K2BHM net control.
Oh, I'm laughing here because the reason why Jim is harping on this is because I've pretty much told him I don't know a whole lot about it. I've been, since I got my ticket, I've lived in a lot of very temporary places. So grounding was not really, something I was going to do at a house that I didn't own. So I'll be learning myself. And I mean, I know that it's a good idea to ground things. I know that you shouldn't tie into the existing grounds that are at your house for electrical and cable and phone lines that have already been put there. You should start fresh. But I don't know a lot more about it. I just know some very basic things. So I know that there's different types of grounds for different purposes too in amateur radio. So it's one of the things I've suggested is that we get somebody in to talk to us about shack electricals and grounding, because I think it's something we all need to learn a little bit about. But definitely a good topic. And if anybody else is on tonight that knows more than I do, which would be pretty much almost anybody, including the mailman and the septic tank guy, you can let us know.
I can share a little bit if nobody jumps in K2GOG.
KUA, Steve, K2GOG, K2BHM, net control.
All right, so I'll start with the resources first. I'm not going to make this a political thing, but there's a lot of things that the ARRL does well, and there's things that they don't do well. I'm going to talk about this as a positive. I think it is one of the best publications that they author. I usually buy a few copies, and then when I come across somebody that needs one, I give them a copy. I don't have any because I haven't ordered any recently, but if you have $15 or $20 or whatever it is currently, I would highly suggest looking up on the ARRL's website or anywhere else that sells publications. They have a fantastic book on grounding. That is something that I think is really something that almost every amateur should have. So that's the first bit on resources. Second bit, which I don't know if Neil tried to tee this up for me or not, but we both know somebody who is a legitimate grounding expert due to their professional life, and he's given countless numbers of talks and presentations on the subject. He's local-ish. He lives on Long Island, so a little bit far, but we may, in the future, possibly be able to bring in Don. I'll let, if it comes back around to Neil, I'll let Don share his cost items to keep everyone involved here, but he is somebody who has shared quite a lot. Let me let it drop. But anyway, outside of resources, as Neil said, grounds mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people for a lot of different applications. If we were talking about grounding your electrical system at home compared to RF ground versus if you're talking about grounding in some type of an electrical circuit, they mean all different things to different people. So supposing that Jim or Mr. Fox Top Hat or whatever nickname I could come up with, because it was great meeting him the other day, thinking if it's safety of grounding in the shack, you always want to tie to the same common ground point. Don't daisy chain. You always want to run a wire as thickest that you can get. Keep the impedance. You don't want to daisy chain things if your goal is for safety. If lighting is something, you want to make sure that everything takes the shortest path to ground. So we can go on for forever on this topic, but I'll just say that as like the first bit because it's probably the most general and basic best practice type of stuff worth talking about is RF safety as it relates to lighting. That would probably just be the topic to focus on and ignore everything else for now. So with that, I'll let it go back to Chip to air traffic control it. K2GOG.
Thanks, Steve. Any more comments on grounding and proper methodology?
KD2 comment.
Go ahead.
This should probably be directed at Steve. It just so happens that my office, located on the other side of my garage wall, is literally halfway. I can go to the left and follow that wall, go straight out to the electrical ground that the meter uses. Or I can go right and go out to the ground that I put up for the antenna, which, according to an electrician I talked to, said that I should, every 6 feet, throw another rod in and bond them all together till I get to the original ground that's underneath the meter. So basically, if I go out of my shack
But still,
and
it's
make a
neat.
left and get
So I think
there, well, I guess it wouldn't be a circle. Let me drop for a second. But I'm worried about creating that ground loop thing. The electrician that this is an electrician, don't know nothing about ham radio, but he simply told me when I was, of course, I've been picking everybody's brain. I tried to stop the garbage man, but he didn't really care. He says you do comments on that? Excellent. So yeah, your electrician friend is 1,000% correct. You have to think of that as the ground system. So, for you to effectively get from your shack ground to that, yes, that's what you would need to do is drive, thinking if you have decent soil, at least 6 feet, you might need to go further. But, doing it that way with probably 0 gauge or 2 gauge wire between the rods, that would constitute your ground system. When I say daisy chaining, I mean, think about this from your ham shack perspective. You got all this fancy radio gear or whatever on a table or desk or whatever, and you think you want to keep your wiring nice and neat. Don't take a wire and connect it from the back of your HF radio to the back of your power supply to the back of your antenna tuner, and just keep daisy chaining it that way. That is incorrect. When you're grounding things in your shack, you want to have a bus bar where you run a separate wire to everything. So all the equipment is tied together to one central point, and then from there, you can then connect it to your ground system for your resident. The best way to do it. So that's what I mean by daisy chaining. But otherwise, yeah, get a drilling hammer or whatever you're going to do, build up some arm strength, because you're going to be a busy guy pounding rods and tying things. And, keep an eye on copper cabling, because you're going to be, buying yourself quite a lot of copper to keep resistance at 0 level. Comment?
W2NDG comment.
Go ahead. I think, was that Jim and then Neil?
Thanks, Steve. Just like yesterday, you explained it down for me, and I understand now what you meant by daisy chaining. I was getting worried that you were talking about not going every 6 feet with the new grounding rods. But I do understand what you're saying. Yeah, don't daisy chain. I got it now that you explained it that way. Excuse me. Let me drop 1 second. Anyway, that is my plan. A bus bar behind the rigs. Each rig specifically goes to that bus bar. Then that bus bar will go out and take the shortest route to the electrical ground rod. And a buddy of mine happened to have it. He'll go crazy when I use this word. A pipe banger. He calls it a slide hammer. He hates when I call it a pipe banger. But I'll tell you what, when that thing's up 8 foot and you don't have 2 arms to use, it takes me a while. But that one arm and just lifting it and dropping it, it does drive that 8-foot thing down. Oh, I'm exhausted the next day. That left arm doesn't even work after that. But anyway, I'll hand it over to Neil if it's okay with you, Jim.
Sure, go for it, Neil.
All right. I was just going to offer. Steve is talking about Don Kane, Kane, and he is WB2BEZ on Long Island. And yes, he is the guy. But he hasn't. There isn't a video of him doing the presentation, unfortunately. I did send to Jim a link to the presentations themselves. So he has a couple of PowerPoints. I haven't run through them myself yet, so I don't know how informative they are without Don standing there talking about them. But yeah, he is the resident expert down there, and it'd be great to have him talk about it. So it's if you look on the Ham Radio University site and you go into past presentations, there's a whole list of presentations going back to 2018, and their YouTube channel has a lot of their videos. But the only thing for Don is that one year, the presentation, and there's one presentation on safety in the ham shack, and the other one is on grounding. So I'll have to take a look at it when I get a chance. I did get a question from KB2RWW. They wanted me to throw out to the net to see if anybody had heard something that he was hearing. So when we're done on this subject, I can throw that one out.
Yeah, okay. Basically, grounding is not an easy, simple subject. You've got conflicting things. From the National Electrical Code, you want one single point ground. So if you have sub-feed panels or whatever, they have to carry a separate ground back to the main panel, and the main panel is grounded to a ground rod, put it back up to the water service where you got an underground water pipe coming in, or some other backup, so that if one fails, you got a backup. Now, when you start talking about radio amateur stuff, now you're looking for grounding for RF purposes for the antenna to function properly. And RF has a totally different set of rules to it than electrical safety grounds for functionality. And keep in mind, no matter what you do, when there's a lightning bolt strike somewhere close, you've got thousands of amps traveling through the air, which generates a very strong magnetic field. And your power lines coming down the road, going into your house, they are a conductor and they are subject to induced voltages generated by the effects of that high magnetic field. So even though it's not a direct strike to the power lines in the house, magnetic coupling, you can generate thousands of volts on top of your AC coming in. And it can get high enough that there's nothing you're going to do that's going to protect you from that. And you say grounded, but the typical impedance of a ground rod for electrical safety in the house is probably 20, 30, 40 ohms, 100 ohms, depending on how moist the soil is. Drop a second. So there are a lot of things to be considered, a lot of conflicting things, and like Steve said, the AR report or Neil's expert, I'm sure they've done a lot more research on it and have a much better handle on it and can give us a better picture. And if nobody else has any comments, I'll throw it at Neil to the comments from YouTube. KQVHM, Net Control.
All right, I guess that's my cue. A couple of things from KB2RWW here. One related just came up. He's basically saying the same thing you were, Jimmy. Grounding is a trick question, to ground or not to ground. He said RF ground is different than electrical ground, and that's exactly right. So it would be great to see if we can get Don to talk to us. I'll have to try to get in touch with him. Also, KB2RWW is asking if anybody in the area where he is, and I believe he's in the Kerhonkson area, is hearing an open carrier signal on 147.420. 147.420. I can't check it now because my good antenna is on this radio. But if there's anybody around that area, we'll have to ask Kenny when we hear from him again, because he's in Marbletown or Mose. We know that they both have decent antennas, at least now. And anybody else around there. But if you're hearing a carrier on that frequency, or it's something extremely local to RWW, so 147.420 is where he's hearing that.
Comment? Go ahead.
KB2GPS. Just said that when I comment. I was in Kerhonkson. Give me a minute, I can tune there and see if I do.
Sure, go ahead. Live testing in action.
KB2GPS US-wide.
All right, we're checking it out, and I believe RWW's name is Bobby. So I know I've talked to him on the radio before, but he's been chatting with me on YouTube here. So, trying to think if there's any other related topics. But yeah, Jim, Jim and Jim, this is great stuff. And there's so many little nuances here. And that's why it's good to talk to someone like Don, because things are different in different locations, just like, Jim was saying, with different kinds of soil. And I assume it's also going to be a huge difference if you're living in a house that's aluminum sided. I imagine that has an effect on it as well. So I could be wrong, but I'll throw it back to Jim.
Go ahead, Bob. KWBHM, net control.
Yeah, I saw that pop up on the YouTube channel, that question that WWW had regarding the open carrier. Just FYI, nothing on the north side of town. I know I'm a little bit out of reach from Groningen, but I hear absolutely nothing up here, the base antenna. Back to that.
Comment on the open carrier.
Go ahead, Steve.
So you know me, Jim, right? I'll double, triple, and quadruple click down on certain topics to get to the root. So for Bobby, I would wonder, does he know if that is an open carrier, actually an open carrier, or is it something that is internally generated by his radio or a radio or something? Did he disconnect his antenna? Did he try it on a different radio? Because different radios have different mixing properties that may introduce what's called a birdie or a internally generated signal. Did he take any kind of antenna and try to wave it around and see if it changes? So those are all kind of the questions that I would ask to rule out, is it actually an open carrier? Because it's like saying, is it nighttime or daytime? We would need to open up the door to look outside if we don't have access to a clock that we know is accurate. So those would be kind of questions that I would ask. Obviously, I'm not up anywhere near Kerhonkson, but those would be some things I would kind of throw to see if Bobby can share some additional analysis. And is anyone else hearing it?
Yeah, good first step to see if anybody else is hearing it, and then investigate, like you say, from there to try and pin it down to see if it's actually there or a synthesizer malfunction, like we used to call birdies on the scanners back years ago. Anyhow, any more information on the mysterious 147.420 signal? BHM, net control. Go ahead, KWBHM, net control.
The signal is on all my radios, regardless of its setup. It is a repetitive CW6 carrier, and it just goes over and over and over again with no ID. And it's about an S4 in my location. And by the time I get out and kind of stay there, I got most of that, Jim. Can I take it direct?
Yeah, go ahead. It sounds like he was possibly mobile. It was difficult for me to understand.
I got so used to over the years playing weak signal and satellite where I can kind of mentally fill in some of it, and I think I did a pretty good job. So if I understood everything that he said, one thing that might come to mind, and this was a fun thing to remember, when I lived on Long Island, Cablevision, who's the major cable telco down there, but now it's owned by Altice. Anyway, they had a known number of leaks in their cable system. And the funny thing was, one of those frequencies was around 147, 420. And the reason why I know that is because a few of us that lived in the Levittown, Hicksville area, and Farmingdale actually, Jim, so you would appreciate that, we used to use 147.420 as a simplex frequency because we knew that outside of certain areas, we can count on Cablevision to secure our communication. So, that being said, if it's that widespread and around an S4 level, I would kind of throw that as something to consider. Where is that? Frontier, I think, is probably the cable ISP. So it could be something just emanating from the cable telco. Lots of people, when they terminate service or they don't terminate it, literally, they won't terminate a loose end. They just have like an extra cable hanging around, and they don't put a 75 ohm terminator on it, which basically means it leaks RF out into the air. And if you have enough of those loose end points, it just kind of provides like a saturation point. So that might be something just to kind of consider if he's driving around and see where he's picking it up. I wouldn't be surprised if it's something related to the cable.
Comment? KP2G.
Go ahead, Matt. K2BHM Net Control.
Thanks. I used to work as a cable splicer. Yes, there's an awful lot of deterioration out there everywhere, all of the physical plants, telcos, and cable providers. So leakage is very definite. But I tuned to 147.420 and heard nothing here locally. I'm in Kerhonkson, not far from the old Granite Hotel. So that's
Yeah, that brings back memories. Went to a friend's wedding there years ago. Anyhow, typically the cable companies will put a signal out somewhere in the middle of the FM broadcast band, and they call it a leak tone. And every cable company vehicle has a receiver tuned to that. And if there's any activity on that tone, location for repair. Because cable TV has stuff all up and down the bands that interfere with everything under the sun. So it could possibly be that you're hearing a particular signal there, and there could be dozens of others. Like Steve said, when people terminate their service and just pull the plug, you don't know what you're going to get. Interestingly enough, my old house up in Cohoes, I tried all kinds of antennas for over the air for channel 16 and 13, and nothing really worked great. And went to cable, and when I had it turned off, the cable going out to the pole, just hanging dead air, was a much better antenna for the local over the air than an antenna tuned to it with a strip amp specifically for that particular channel. So go figure. Anyhow, any more comments on the 147.42 situation?
W2NDG.
Go ahead, Neil.
So the one that Steve is talking about is it's cable channel 18, but the frequencies don't match. It is still possible for it to interfere in a broader way, but the carriers themselves are for channel 18 are on 145.25, which is kind of funny because some of you may be familiar with the repeater on 145.25 WB2BQW, which is like a multi-location wide area repeater. And you will hear, if you use that repeater when you're driving around, in some of the neighborhoods that have terrible cable systems, you'll hear the interference when you key up that repeater. And the audio carrier for that channel is 149.75, so that's out of range for us. But that's the one channel that falls within our bands, but it's, it wouldn't be on 147 unless something is seriously wrong.
There's actually multiple leak points. There's like 3 frequencies that were like common.
KBW.
KB2RWW. Yes, I'm mobile. Sorry for the bad reception. Yeah, it's a series of repetitive, like a CW carrier that it's just repetitive. It could be the cable company. God knows that I don't have cable, so God knows it can be them. I've had problems with them once before. It's just it was kind of weird that it's just there and I don't hear it on any of the four common harmonics up or lower.
Yeah, there's any number of things it could be. It could be two different signals interfering and you wind up with a difference. It used to be fun back in the day. Two signals would come together and the difference would be the IF frequency of the receiver and get right through as if it was hardwired in. But anyhow, just curious, those frequencies now. I know back in the day of the analog, you had the picture carrier 1 1/4 megs up above the bottom of the window, and the sound carrier was 3/4 of a meg below the top of the window. But now that everything is digital, I'm not sure what the signal is nowadays. How is that laid out? I don't think we have individual carriers like that anymore, do we? Any insight on that, Neil? K2BHF?
No, I'm not sure. I think they're using the same frequency ranges, which, the deal, a lot of people don't understand how cable TV actually works, and the reason why it's so important that everything be terminated and shielded and filtered, because it can interfere with the outside world, is what we're witnessing here. But there may still be, sometimes they call the video carrier the pilot tone. It's kind of like a reference tone, and maybe that still exists in the digital domain. I'm not sure. It's a question for somebody else. So this would be interesting, and sounds like a job for our transmitter hunters. So to get out there with our equipment, see if we can track it down.
Extra points for the phone number?
A bunch of people wandering around the Kerhunks and wilds with Yagi antennas.
Definitely a good reason to call the cops. Do they have them there? Anyhow, at this point, anybody else have any other questions, comments, things I'd like to discuss or bring up? Give me a call sign and the floor is yours. K2BHM, net control.
Nothing to add here, but I just want to say this is a good net, Jim, and everybody else who participated. And I'm just going to use this opportunity to clear. So thanks for having me included in the rotation. I'll catch you guys again. This is K2GOG. I'll be clear 805.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for joining us tonight. If there's no last comments or whatever, I'll close out the net and open it up to, well, this isn't a regular coverage, but regular coverage.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thanks for running the net tonight. And when are you not going to be here? Which 2 Sundays? Is it next Sunday and the Sunday after?
I enjoyed it. And with that, let me remind everybody that we have the 8:35 on the 8:05 in the morning with Paul and Rob and Jed alternating or taking turns at the control. And then we have the 6:30 net with various different control operators there. Dave, K2JOV, runs the Thursday night net at 8 o'clock, more geared towards radio amateur topics. And Neil and I run the net 8 o'clock Sunday nights, science and technology, trying to keep it open to whatever, not necessarily electronics or radioimetry, whatever comes up, whatever is on your mind that you want to know more about. So, and normally Neil is the host, and I read shotgun, but we swapped roles today, and it was fun. Hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, and looking to see you all on E35. And with that, I'm going to specify that this was a official function of the OMARC Radio Amateur Club, or Black Mountain Amateur Radio Club, at omarcclub.org. Visit our site. We open these nets up to any licensed radio amateur. You don't have to be a member, but check out the site, and if you like what you hear, join us. We'd love to have you. And with that, I'm going to officially close the net and back over to Radio Amateur Service as normal. K2BHM will be off.
Thanks, Jim. W2NDG. And is it the next 2 Sundays that I won't have you?
I should be around next Sunday, and then after that, you won't see me till June.
All right. Well, we'll talk. So we have another Sunday to cover. All right. Thank you. And I'm going to end the stream. I want to thank everybody for attending. And again, thanks, Jim, for running things tonight. W2NDG. I'm going to hang out for a little bit.